In 1923, Forbes magazine published a list of the 8 wealthiest men in the country. Among them were the owner of the largest steel company, the head of the largest banking fund, and the owner of the largest wheat monopoly in the nation. 25 years later, journalists went looking for those same 8 men. 4 had declared bankruptcy. 2 had taken their own lives in prison. 1 had been murdered. The last had died a beggar, having lost his entire fortune. 8 men, some of the smartest, most powerful people in the world. All of them ended up at zero. But during that very same era, there was another family, one whose name never appeared on that list, because they never advertised their wealth. Today, 150 years later, that family's descendants still manage billions. What was the difference? In this video, I'm going to show you the exact mechanism, the one your bank won't tell you, the one your financial advisor won't explain, because the people who profit from your not knowing this aren't just those advisors. They're profiting from you not knowing it too. Stay until the end, because in part 3 I'm going to show you a structure that is completely legal, yet something 99% of people have never even heard of. A structure that lets families pass millions of dollars to their children without paying a cent in tax. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Think about everything you were taught growing up. Study hard, get a good job, save your paycheck, put money into a retirement account, retire at 65. Who was that advice really written for? Not for you. It was written for employers, because they need obedient, stable, long-term workers. Now pay attention to this. In that system, most of your income comes from a single source, your salary. And salary is the single most heavily taxed form of income in the world. In the United States, the average worker loses somewhere between 22 and 37% of their income directly to tax, before you even count Social Security and other deductions. Now compare that to where an old money family's income actually comes from: capital gains, rental income, dividends, and borrowing against assets. Each of these is taxed at a completely different and often far lower rate, sometimes close to zero. This isn't an accident. Tax law has, for over a century, been written in favor of asset owners and against wage earners. Why? Because the people writing those laws are asset owners themselves. So here's your first piece of forbidden knowledge. The more you work, the more the system takes from you. The more assets you own, the less it takes. Now, let's get into the actual mechanism. Something known as buy, borrow, die. It's completely legal. It simply isn't explained to ordinary people, because using it requires a certain asset base, and banks only offer it to their wealthiest clients. Here's how it works, step by step. First, buy. A wealthy person doesn't hoard cash. They buy assets, stocks, real estate, business equity. These assets grow in value over time, but as long as they're not sold, that growth exists only on paper and isn't subject to tax. Second, borrow. When this person needs cash to buy a house, fund a business, even cover everyday expenses, they don't sell the asset. Instead, they pledge it as collateral to a bank and take out a low-interest loan. If someone has a $100 million stock portfolio, a bank will happily lend them $20 or $30 million at 3 or 4% interest. Why does this matter so much? Because a loan is not counted as income. You don't pay tax on a bank loan. So this person effectively accesses millions of dollars, yet none of it shows up as taxable income on any tax return. Third, and this is the darkest but most powerful part, die. When this person passes away, their assets transfer to their heirs. But under the law, at the moment of inheritance, the asset's cost basis resets to its current market value. This is called a step-up in basis. So if an asset was bought for $1 million and is now worth $50 million, and the heir sells it, they only pay tax on any growth that happens after that point. The $49 million of prior growth is essentially erased from a tax perspective. The result? This family never sells the asset, so they never pay capital gains tax. They live off borrowed money, and loans aren't income, so they never pay income tax on it either. And when they die, the step-up in basis means most of that growth escapes taxation entirely. This is technically 100% legal. It's exactly why the people on the world's billionaire lists often report lower effective tax rates than a middle-class family. Now let's move to the second, even less-known structure, the Dynasty Trust. When ordinary people hear the word trust, they picture a simple account set aside for inheritance. A dynasty trust is a completely different animal. In a normal inheritance, money passes to your child, and when that child dies, it passes to their child. And every single time, an inheritance tax is paid. In the United States, that tax can run as high as 40%. Over 3 generations, more than half the family's wealth can simply disappear into taxation. How does a dynasty trust prevent this? The asset isn't registered in your name. It's registered in the name of the trust itself. You, your children, your grandchildren. None of you legally own the asset. You're all simply beneficiaries. Because the asset is never legally anyone's personal property, no inheritance tax applies when it passes from generation to generation, since technically no inheritance is ever taking place. The asset simply remains inside the trust. In certain states, Nevada, South Dakota, Delaware, these trusts can legally last for up to 1,000 years, or even indefinitely. That means a structure you set up today could still be protecting assets for your 10th generation of descendants. There's another layer of protection, too. Creditor protection. If one of your grandchildren goes through a divorce, or their business goes bankrupt, the assets inside the trust remain untouched, because legally, they were never that person's personal property to begin with. This is why old money families don't hand cash directly to their children. They build trusts with rules baked in, education expenses covered at 21, capital released at 30 if a business plan is presented, and the core of the fortune never directly touchable at all. That way, one generation's bad decision can't destroy everything. Now here's a statistic worth sitting with. Research from the Williams Group found that roughly 70% of wealthy families lose their fortune by the second generation, and 90% lose it entirely by the third. This pattern repeats itself everywhere, from the United States to Asia. Why? Because people assume the problem is a lack of financial knowledge. But the research says something different. About 60% of wealth loss comes from a breakdown in family, communication, and trust. 25% comes from heirs simply not being prepared. Only somewhere between 3 and 10% is actually due to bad investment decisions or poor tax planning. This matters because it's the opposite of what almost everyone assumes. Old money families know this, which is why they start teaching children how money actually works from an extremely young age, sometimes as early as 7. Historical records. On the Rothschild family note that younger family members were brought into real business meetings from a young age, watching real decisions get made, not as a classroom lesson, but as lived experience. Alongside this, these families draw a sharp distinction between being a wealth owner and being a wealth steward. A child isn't handed wealth. A child is handed the responsibility of protecting it. It's a subtle distinction, but it's the one that matters most. Now ask yourself something. Think about who's showing off luxury cars, watches, and mansions on social media. Now think about how many people on Forbes' top 50 list actually have a public social media presence. The answer, almost none of them. This isn't a coincidence. It's a strategy. In old money terminology, it's called quiet wealth. Why does it matter? Because visible wealth attracts targets. It draws tax audits. It draws lawsuits and creditors. It puts family members at risk of theft, extortion, even kidnapping. And it invites friends and distant relatives to come asking for money. That's why old money families teach their children. Don't show your wealth. Protect it. They don't drive expensive cars because a car is a depreciating asset. They buy land, real estate, and business equity assets. that grow quietly over time while drawing far less attention. This is one of the simplest, yet most powerful principles you can apply to your own life. Don't convert your wealth into social status. Let it grow in silence instead. Now, you might be thinking, I don't have millions of dollars. None of this applies to me. You'd be wrong. A scaled-down version of every one of these principles works at any income level. First, build assets before you spend, not the other way around. Every time you get paid, the first question should be, how much of this can I turn into an asset? Not how much of this can I spend? Second, learn to treat debt as a tool, not an enemy. Not all debt is bad. Consumption debt, financing a phone, a vacation, is bad. Debt used to acquire an appreciating asset, or borrowed cheaply against an asset you already hold, is a completely different category. Third, set up a simple trust or estate plan now, before you're wealthy, not after. In the United States, something like a revocable living trust is accessible even to ordinary families, and it simplifies and protects the inheritance process down the line. Fourth, start the money conversation with your family early. Teach a 10-year-old where money actually comes from and how it grows, using real examples. That conversation lays the foundation for how they'll manage wealth as adults. Fifth, stay invisible. Keep your financial situation private, even from your closest circle. It protects you from becoming a target, and it forces you to make decisions from a place of humility rather than performance. So now you know what you didn't know before. Why some families stay wealthy for 5 generations, while others lose everything in a single lifetime. The difference was never luck. It wasn't education, and it wasn't even intelligence. The difference is knowing the system and applying it quietly. By watching this video, you already know more than 99% of people out there. The only question left is what you're going to do with that knowledge. If this video added value for you, subscribe, because in the next one, I'm breaking down the 5 specific money rules old money families teach their children by age 7. Rules I guarantee you never learned in school. See you in the next one.